Conference is a continuation of a fun and informative semester on why Ashtanga, of all the different things you're dedicating yourself to, why this practice. And we've been discussing Sthira Sukham and this idea that every pose, all of our breath, all of our vinyasas have these two qualities of being strong and focused and rooted through our bandhas and extending through that rooting system, and at the same time this quality of fluidity and lightness and grace and letting things roll off us. And the teachings, as always, but especially for this one, have been as in yoga as in life. And you know, this week we started by saying that Sthira is what brings all of us to particularly the Ashtanga mat. And I think oftentimes, if I was saying, this is kind of funny, if you ever tell a friend that doesn't really do yoga, oh, I do yoga, I do Ashtanga yoga, they think of you're all flexible and you can put your foot behind your head and you're a pretzel. And then I think everyone at some point had this little sneaky joy of bringing a friend to class just so they could see, and to blow them out of the water a little bit, right? And people don't realize what a strong practice it is and what physical endurance it takes. And so what I've noticed over the years of the little bit of my psychology is that the people that not only are attracted to Ashtanga in particular, not just yoga, but Ashtanga, are people that are, so a lot of times we say A-type, but there are different ways in the world of psychology we can identify personality types. But what I would say is, and even as I look around the room, you are all very determined people, you're all very successful, you're very disciplined, you're very motivated, and in all those qualities of sthira, that's, you have that strength and that willpower. You're also some of the most critical, like judgment to yourself and hard on yourself. And, I was teasing a private student I was working with, and I was saying, I don't have to pull out my whip very often and, discipline my Ashtangis because you guys do it yourself. You're very driven. And so that's what brings us to the mat today and tomorrow and a year from now, and when you're injured or when you're busy, and as life takes its turns right and left, you still find your way back to your mat, and that is the sthira in you. That really is the Ashtanga in you, is that sthira. But in that, this practice is so amazing and beautiful to me because it really requires that we find our sukham and we find our way of creating lightness within the practice through bandhas, and also our way of not being critical and judging ourselves and comparing ourselves and why can't I do this, or should now be able to do that, and all these kind of things that we're trying to find this beautiful marriage of that. So last week we had demos. This week I don't have my demos with me, but we did look at again the bandhas and how we jump through with lightness through our rooting system. And one of my great teachings over the years, and if I could just encourage or inspire people enough to practice that it's a game changer, is to slow it down. Is to use your bandhas, your rooting system, to pull up and almost feel like you move in slow motion. So we kind of demoed jump throughs and how we can pull through that bandha system and to find your lightness in that through kind of slowing it down and making yourself more kind of aware of that. So the sukham part of the practice as well is like this David Swenson, like lightness and floating. But the sukham part of the practice is also like that I cannot be so hard on myself, and I can say, today I only have 30 minutes for a Mysore practice. That's great. Almost everyone that comes in here is like, oh, Diana, I'm really sorry, but today I can't do this and that because my shoulder's been bothering me. And so I'm all like, cool. I'm kind of like the Sukham Ashtanga teacher, because I feel like for the most part, I just accept I help you accept what it is that you're bringing to the mat today. And hopefully to bring light to it sometimes and play with it more. And again, I feel like some of our most greatest leaders in spirituality have transitioned into this place we talked about last week with our quote from Deepak Chopra, into a place of joy and playfulness and lightness. And some of the great examples are from different religions as well. So last week's quote was from our ancient text by Deepak Chopra, and he said there's actually symptoms of enlightenment and reaching a higher consciousness. And the symptoms were what? These are from the Vedas and the Upanishads, these old texts. They say, how do you know what is a symptom that you're like moving into a higher form of consciousness? You worry less. You worry less and you're a little bit more playful and joyful. And what was the second symptom? Synchronicity, intuition, feeling a connectedness to things. And if we look at the koshas, and again, I've been talking about the koshas a lot, above ground are the first three koshas, my body, my energy, and my thinking mind. And below the surface, yogis are constantly watering, like I'm sprinkling water in this garden below the surface of the things that sit closer to your soul, which is Vijnanamaya kosha, Anandamaya kosha, which is intuition, synchronicity. When you're living that life from here, this is when you start to manifest those kind of things. So I said, for me, it kind of feels like when I'm watering those things in my yoga practice, I'm coming to my yoga practice, I'm meditating, I'm conscious when I'm here, I'm mindful when I'm critical, and I'm watering that. All of a sudden, one day, like this little thing pops out of the earth, and I realize, like, that's my higher consciousness, you know. I kind of compared it to, you know, we do chaturanga, and then one day you're just strong in chaturanga, and you can do it. You know, but our spirituality is different because it's something we don't see. It's something we can't measure. And so I had a student say, you know, that they were normally would get in a fight with their ex over something about the kids, and he was in the situation that they've played out a million times and just gotten super mad at each other. And he said, in one day, I was listening to her differently, and I was able to act differently. And because I acted differently, she acted differently. And the next thing I knew, we were like dealing with this kid issue, completely respectful, with compassion, and it went so well. And he said, I realized, I had this moment where I realized I had changed. That is the little sprout that comes out of the dirt. You know, that's that little sprout that's like, I was comparing it to like just on my deck, I have these pots that have plants in them and stuff, and every now and then I walk past them. And then one day, like out of nowhere, all of a sudden there's this beautiful little creature plant that I didn't know was growing inside the pot, and it just pops out of the earth, and you're like, wow, there you are. You've been growing in that pot, and I didn't even know it. And our spirituality is like that. We're like growing stuff in our pot, you know, and we just water it, and we're growing stuff in the pot, and then one day some situation happens, and you realize you've changed, you've transformed. That's what Deepak Chopra was talking about. Higher consciousness is transformation, really. And I love all the yoga texts because it's like, it's not about like sitting on the mountain and meditating and, you know, I am the spiritual evolved person. It's like, no, I know I'm spiritually evolved when I'm dealing with a situation in life where I normally might be pissy or not very compassionate, and all of a sudden now I am, you know, just the daily life stuff. And so I was thinking about like the book Joy, and the book Joy is two amazing leaders, Bishop Tutu and the Dalai Lama, and how this book is all about, these two men have completely different doctrines, and yet they have all of this beautiful stuff in common with the way their spiritual practice. And the two things, I would say that one of the main things these two men have in common is they're goofy, silly, joyful, happy men despite everything in life that's happened to them. You know, what a great example that is. So, you know, last week though, we were looking at sort of, you know, the philosophy of yoga from India, and then we have Bishop Tutu and His Holiness, the Dalai Lama. And it reminded me of this Native American prayer that I've been sharing with you guys for many years. But I thought, isn't it interesting that it's the same teaching? And it's called Symptoms of Peace. A lot of you that have been with me for a while remember this. So just remember last week's quote about when we're rising in our consciousness, we don't worry as much, and there's symptoms that we let more things roll off of us, and we're more connected with our intuition. This is the Native American prayer from the Native American Cultural Society that I think just so beautifully says the same thing, but from the Native American spirituality. Symptoms of peace. Tendency to think and act spontaneously rather than from fear. An unmistakable ability to enjoy the moment. Loss of interest in judging other people. loss of interest in interpreting the actions of others, loss of interest in conflict. And this one, someone put behind it, very serious symptom, loss of interest or ability to worry. So it's the same. Frequent overwhelming episodes of appreciation, feeling of connectedness with others and with nature, frequent attacks of smiling through your eyes and from your heart, increasing tendency to let things happen rather than to make things happen, increased susceptibility to love extended by others as well as an uncontrollable urge to extend it. That is like a common spirituality of moving into higher realms of being. And for me, the visual of like that little plant that you've been watering in your yoga practice, in your meditation, is popping out of the earth. So I finish with a quote by Swami Satyananda, which is a translation of the Yoga Sutras. So again, these old texts that are part of our practice, to me, are so applicable to life, and it's beautifully said here. From the Yoga Sutras, we are not going to change the whole world, but we can change ourselves and feel as free as birds. We can be serene even in the midst of calamities and, by our serenity, make others more tranquil. Serenity is contagious. If we smile at someone, he or she will smile back, and a smile costs nothing. We should plague everyone with joy. I love that. This is Yoga Sutras. We should plague everyone with joy. If we are to die in a minute, why not die happily laughing? So I decided last night with Sophia that the homework for this week is to plague everyone with joy. Namaste.